By the release of For Your Eyes Only, the 007 adventures have become the highest-grossing movie series of all time. But in 1982, as pre-production begins on the 13th 007 adventure, it is announced that Sean Connery will star in a rival James Bond film. In light of this competition, the question for the producers now is, will 13 be an unlucky number for 007? In the fall,
we then made a trip to Udaipur.
When we got to Udaipur, we found that, in fact, all the locations we needed, we were able to find within a sort of 10 or 15-minute drive of the hotel in the center of Udaipur. I mean, it was the most extraordinary piece of luck.
India is such a big and vast place, and transportation is so difficult that it's good to find a location that'll fit all of your requirements.
It was obvious that within an hour of being there that this was the place that George MacDonald Fraser had written about. There was the floating palace on the lake.
Peter Lamont and myself immediately got our heads together and we thought that we could make that into Octopussy's palace.
At that time, the Maharana, who is like the king of kings, he's above a Maharaja, he was just converting part of his palace into it was called the Shivnivas Palace Hotel.
Very sumptuous suites. They're really for people on special holidays.
A lot of the main unit members stayed there, and I was the very first guest. And I think I was the first one to check out as well.
in the coming months, Lamont makes many trips back and forth from England to India. One almost proves to be his last.
There was a message from the radio. It said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're being hijacked to Lahore."
And they sat in the heat on the tarmac for about 12 hours before it was resolved.
I remember sitting next to this fellow, and he said, "What do you do?" So I said, "I work for James Bond." He said, "Haven't you got any of those gadgets with you?"
The flight crew overcame the hijacker.
And the captain put his arm around the back of the cabin door into the cockpit, grabbed the fire axe and smashed this fellow over the head. And as he kind of fell out the door, he kind of grabbed hold of the frame and got his pistol ready to fire, and of course just lost his balance and fell out. And then there was a rat-tat-tat of machine guns outside, and everybody just fell to the floor.
It was very worrying because we didn't feel it was a good idea for them to deprive us of our production designer.
The filmmakers also face being deprived of their James Bond. By the 1980s, Roger Moore's multi-picture contract has expired. Now his deals are negotiated for one film only, with Moore always claiming that the current Bond will be his last.
It was like a continuing game between Cubby, Roger, and presumably MGM. All about negotiations, you know.
As pre-production on Octopussy commences, it seems that, indeed, For Your Eyes Only will be Moore's final Bond film.
There was a lot of doubt whether Roger was going to do it or not.
Other actors are tested for the role of James Bond, including Michael Billington, who had appeared in the pre-credits of The Spy Who Loved Me. Maud Adams is invited to Pinewood to screen test with another potential 007.
I was asked if I would go to London and do a screen test. And then I found out that Roger had not signed up for the next Bond, and they were considering somebody new.
You look surprised to see me. I thought you were expecting me.
So you are Titania Romanova.
My friends call me Tanya.
Mine call me James Bond.
It was an excellent test.
But I think my mouth is too big.
It's just the right size. For me, that is.
Although he's an American, he's, sophisticated, kind of has a mid-Atlantic style about him.
One of the first roles cast is that of the Secret Service's man in India.
Cubby Broccoli was a great fan of tennis, and he used to come out and watch Wimbledon all the time.
Armitage is asked to come to Pinewood for a screen test.
In the back of my mind, I was thinking to myself, well, I'm going to do this simply because who else will be able to say, well, they worked Pinewood in the morning and played Wimbledon in the afternoon?
But with Sean Connery set to do a rival Bond, the filmmakers take no chances.
It can be kind of confusing. You have two Bonds going at the same time.
There obviously were concerns.
At the last moment, Roger Moore signs for his 6th outing as 007.
Well, they've got a new, young, unknown actor called Roger Moore playing James Bond.
In the end, Cubby really instinctively didn't really want to use an American playing Bond.
But while Brolin fails to win a leading part in the film, Maud Adams is more fortunate.
I didn't really understand until the day of the screen test that they were serious about me playing Octopussy.
Of course, Maud Adams has the distinction of being the only leading lady to have appeared in 2 James Bond films.
Roger loved her, always thought she was one of his best leading ladies, and Cubby thought she was fantastic.
The things I've always said about Maud, it was always calm, always ready, very pleasant to work with.
As the production date nears, other key roles are cast.
Cubby was an old friend of Louis Jourdan, and they were socially very close.
Louis Jourdan, what a gentleman. Such elegance that he brought to the production.
He's a very suave man.
Cubby always loved the way Louis would say, Octopussy.
Octopussy. Octopussy.
A relative newcomer wins the role of Magda.
Christina Wayborn, I'd seen in a miniseries in America. She played Greta Garbo.
They'd also seen a poster that I had done with a Bengal tiger, sitting on a Bengal tiger in a sort of a Bondish-looking safari outfit.
The part called for a very athletic person, and she was extremely athletic and beautiful and a good actress.
Once again, I got to play with a Swedish actress. It was really quite extraordinary that in both of the films that I did, I had Swedish co-stars.
Although she and Maud were both Swedish, she was very good contrast.
It made a lot of fun for me, of course, because we had a lot of things in common and we could speak our Swedish when we didn't want anyone to hear us.
Indian actor Kabir Bedi is chosen for the role of Gobinda.
I played more the physical villain rather than the intellectual villain. The sort of jaws of Octopussy.
Kabir Bedi came with a reputation because he was a big heartthrob in Italy.
Casting director Debbie McWilliams finds another actor with a reputation for the pivotal role of General Orloff.
Barbara had seen a play of mine called Greek in L.A., which was a huge hit in a small theater.
Stephen Berkoff arrived for his audition in a full samurai suit, looking absolutely extraordinary.
He's just a power to be reckoned with.
Stephen Berkoff, the most flamboyant actor, was a wonderful Russian villain.
He gave it all this energy.
The West is decadent and divided.
Very talented man.
Production now begins in earnest on the film, whose title is a source of some controversy.
I did have some reservation about the name. I said, my God, I mean, that name as a title?
For a long time, people said, oh, you're doing the next James Bond movie. What's the name of it? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't think they've named it yet.
The lady interviewing me said, what is the title of the next Bond film? And I said, Octopussy. And she blushed, and she said, you have to be joking. And I said, why? What's wrong with Octopussy?
There was a great debate about whether it would be acceptable by the censor in America.
I mean, it was a name that Ian Fleming had given to one of his short stories, in actual fact.
When I realized that Octopussy really was the title of one of his short stories, then I sort of accepted the name Octopussy.
Once you get used to it, it's like, it's not so bad.
On August the 10th, 1982, cameras roll at Germany's Berlin Wall.
When we went to Berlin, it was the height of the Cold War.
It was before the wall came down.
The whole time that we were filming, exactly like you saw in the newsreels, there were the East German guards with their binoculars looking down on what we were doing the whole time.
The East German guards were very puzzled over all this, and it created a lot of diplomatic flack.
There was no question of getting permission to actually go through Checkpoint Charlie with James Bond.
The skeleton crew only shoots for a few days, but 007 leaves his mark. The following week, the first unit begins shooting at Pinewood, where Lois Maxwell finds a surprise waiting.
They gave Miss Moneypenny a secretary for the first time. This is a very beautiful young girl, and obviously I'm going to be pushed out of the Bond films.
She is as attractive and as charming.
As I used to be? I was a little, sort of annoyed until I found that she was James Clavell's daughter And her mother was April Stride, who had been a model with me when in London when we were about 18.
The first take goes less than smoothly.
Take one. Roger came in the door. He said, "Oh, you're not Miss Moneypenny."
I must say you become more beautiful every day.
I am over here.
Well, of course you are.
And I said, "Let me introduce you to my new assistant, Miss Penelope Smallbush." Whereupon Roger tossed the carnations. He said, "My God, Moneypenny, I know where your mind is at."
The end of August finds the crew at RAF Northolt, filming the amazing pre-credits scene.
The Beady Jet sequence had previously been scheduled for Moonraker. We'd seen these Beady Jets, and it was a great idea, and Corky Thornoff, who was the pilot, he came over to London and we had a chat about it.
It was a real plane, yes, it was absolutely amazing.
But getting the plane through the hangar requires some special effects magic.
It was built up with lots of models and stunts and foreground miniatures.
You can actually put an object in the foreground and make it merge with a building in the background so it appears to be part of that building.
We used a third scale door and a third scale model plane.
When the plane actually enters the garage, the door that's nearest to the camera is in fact a miniature and was placed about 4 or 5 feet from the camera to hide the existing door.
We had the hangar way over in the distance, the real hangar.
Between the foreground miniature and the building, there's probably 50, 60 yards.
We had a model on a line that we took through.
And it worked so well, we did the same thing when it exited from the hangar.
To film the jet inside the hangar requires another clever solution.
We put the actual Beady Jet on a car, just on a pole.
John, a very clever engineer, and he got a XJ6 Jaguar, and he stripped the top off the Jaguar.
One of my assistants in the back was working a hydraulic system to bank the plane from side to side.
We were able to actually put Roger Moore inside this thing and fly it through the hangar.
I always prayed that everybody else knew what they were doing, and they weren't like me. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just sitting there.
I would drive the car into the hangar at about 75 miles an hour.
The reason you don't see the pole arm and the Jaguar is because I put lots of figures in the foreground running back left and right to left.
We used the wing to hide the pole arm for the car. And as long as the camera was positioned cleverly with people and things in foreground, you'd never see the car.
They had trouble with the braking system.
And it took a few seconds to realise that the throttle on the car had jammed wide open, and were doing very graceful 360 pirouettes across the grass, straight towards one of Her Majesty's Air Force's planes.
John Richardson avoids an accident, but still must destroy the hangar in miniature.
It's probably only 12th scale, which is quite small. All of the corrugated metal sheets were made of plastic, but they were all stuck on individually, so they would come off individually. But each one was only, 4 inches long.
Meanwhile, another unit films aerial action for Octopussy's climax.
That was an incredible sequence. We shot most of it in the United States.
They wanted us to do a fight on top of an airplane, and we weren't sure this was even possible.
We built handles to hold on to, and we had hidden parachutes.
I came up with an idea that if we put a handle into the paint scheme, you wouldn't see the handle and it looked like the actors are just holding on to the side of the airplane. We had a door on the Twin Beach that could be removed in flight. And so we would always take off in a normal manner, pull the door inside, climb up on the aircraft, do our stunts, and then crawl back into the aircraft, shut the door, and land.
Back in England, the 1st and 2nd units combined forces to shoot scenes of Bond on Octopussy's train.
Up in the Nene Valley, there's a train museum that has, several miles of trains and tunnels. You get rolling stock that's from different countries.
It was a very, very difficult sequence to shoot.
Moore also has to do a bit of stunt driving.
We first of all constructed some special wheels so that it could actually drive along the track. Remember the first day? taking Roger for a test drive down the track in it, and Roger handled it pretty well.
Richardson also stages a head-on collision.
We built a huge air cannon, and as the train drove through, we fired the air cannon. It sort of literally just clipped the front of the car with the train.
In mid-September, while the second unit remains behind, the first unit returns to Pinewood to shoot selected interiors. Then, after a week in the studio, the first unit departs for India.
It was a beautiful place to be shooting, with all these palaces in the lake and boats and lights at night and camels and elephants and all the cows with their bells crossing the road. I mean, it was quintessential India.
Oh, India was magical for me. I never knew I was going to feel that way about it. It actually had such an impact on me for a long time after we left.
Roger and the other artist were staying at this superb hotel made of marble.
John Glenn decided that the camera crew and myself should stay with him in some sort of farm.
One of the artists went home, and Tom Pevsner, there was a producer, said, "Would you like that room?" He knew I wasn't too happy where we were staying. And so I went into this palatial room. This was sheer heaven. I'm going to become an actor next time I'm born into this world.
The Maharana rolls out the red carpet for the film crew.
He was very hospitable and entertained us royally.
Quite often we would be invited for dinner at the Marahanis.
He had pictures of himself with President John F. Kennedy and other dignitaries.
And he would serve us his own rose wine.
It was so delicate.
And it took some unbelievable amount of rose petals in order to make this wine.
But all is not wine and roses for the crew. On September the 22nd, they begin shooting the taxi chase. Local interest poses a problem.
We were besieged by crowds in India. I mean, you know, wall-to-wall people. We'd ask for 5,000 extras and 10,000 would turn up.
There is no way that you can control the public's access.
You can't sometimes see what you're filming for people. It's a big problem.
I was actually scared to go out on the street when they were doing that.
Things can get quite hairy. You never know what's happening. You can never, ever be sure a shot is going to be safe because you don't know which goat will run out of which alley at which point.
Suddenly, completely spontaneous and unrehearsed, a local on a bicycle went right between the sword plate and went through unscathed without even looking left or right. He thought conditions were normal.
The crowds are not the only thing that pose a challenge for Roger Moore.
Bond is not supposed to sweat. Bond's hair doesn't get untied. He's always in a dinner jacket. Everybody is wandering around in tennis shorts or swimming trunks. But Jim Bond is always out there with the tie, the smart suit. I was really more exhausted changing shirts, so he didn't look as though I was perspiring.
Back in England, the second unit continues shooting the train sequence. Doubling Roger Moore for much of the scene is veteran stuntman Martin Grace.
He's travelling along beside the train, and from that point I take over and do the transfer onto the side of the train, which was, to me, was like sort of quite simple. You know, it was something well within my capability.
Martin was a really expert stuntman.
Unlike a lot of other train jobs that I've seen, the actual roof was convexed, which made it much more difficult from the point of view you didn't have a flat roof with railings on the side. Climbing down the side, climbing underneath the train, coming out and climbing back up again. We'd been doing that for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then we had a helicopter for 2 days.
Martin had surveyed the track, and Arthur was shooting from a helicopter. I think he was operating the camera himself.
I know the first day that the weather wasn't very good, so we didn't even get a lot done. And the second day was the fatal day.
No matter how much one practices and how much you kind of go over the area, you know, there's always something that can go wrong.
I was climbing along the side of the train, looking through the window. Had I been able to look forward, I would have seen whatever the obstacle was and pull in, you know, or miss it.
They went up a track they'd never rehearsed on before.
And because the camera was still rolling and nobody had called cut, he entered the unexplored section of the railway line, still hanging outside the carriage.
I was in the helicopter at that time, shooting it from the air. Poor Martin, he misjudged the timing between places.
There was a concrete stanchion by the side of the track, which hit him in the thigh, took away most of the flesh from his thigh, and it cracked his hip, broke his leg, rib, and arm, and he still held on to the train.
It's a tribute to the man's strength that he didn't fall off the train and fall under the wheels.
Martin survived it, but he spent 6 months in hospital.
Immediately, Cubby and I went to the hospital to see him.
We were very concerned. Martin had been a very good stuntman with us, and for a stuntman to get an injury like that is, could mean the end of his career.
Martin was very special, and he had a wonderful spirit, and so I was very hurt to learn he'd shattered his hip.
Roger was at his side at all times.
Martin became very popular in the hospital with Roger Moore turning up to see him.
One of the calmest, quietest, bravest men I've ever come across.
He made a full recovery eventually, but it took a long time.
The accident has a profound effect upon second unit director Arthur Wooster.
It upset me because I was there. I was looking at it through the camera, and I very nearly stopped shooting second unit after that.
Back in India, news of the accident reaches the production.
We all heard about it.
That accident really hit us very badly.
As soon as the accident happened, I came back to try and sort out what had to be done.
I got a phone call to come and see if I would take over.
You have to pull yourself together, and you have to put that behind you.
The tension when I arrived on the set was quite strong.
Very hard on the second unit because they experienced that sort of tragedy.
People were worried about the sequence and whether we could in fact continue the sequence and get it all done safely.
You have to keep the morale of the crew up, and everyone, is a great tradition in the filmmaking that, you have to carry on no matter what.
There was a lot of soul-searching over that.
The show must go on.
At the beginning of October, the unit in India begins shooting the tiger hunt sequence.
The whole thing comes from a short story, of course, called The Most Dangerous Game, where a fellow arrives on an island and he's told by his host that they like to go hunting and he's the quarry.
The Maharani had a huge garden that had grown into disrepair. It was an absolutely fantastic place. So that was the setting of our elephant chase. We were invited to the Maharaja's palace for a cocktail party. And as I came in the door, the first thing I noticed was a stuffed tiger. I said to the Maharaja, "Do you think I could borrow your tiger?" So we mounted the tiger on a wheelbarrow and charged through the bushes with it.
You shove a tiger, stuffed or not, at the camera, and for a split second, it gives you a shock.
And that was our tiger you see in the film.
Later in the week, the crew faces deadly animals of a different sort.
They got this snake charmer down from the hills, and you had to have 4 interpreters to talk to him. John Glenn kept saying, "Is it poisonous? Does it have its teeth in?" No one knew whether this thing that was hovering out of the basket had its fangs and had its poison, and he put it round my shoulders. I was wetting myself with fear.
I kept asking the guy who was in charge of the snake charmer, "So you've taken the poison out of the snake?" And the guy says, "Well, yes and no. We've taken most of it out. We've got to leave a little bit in so that the snake will survive." I said, "Yeah, what is this?"
I don't think VJ was very comfortable with a cobra.
The thing is right in front of me, it's like 2 feet from me. And what happens if he hits you, the poison will come across.
Because these snakes were always getting out of the basket and running all over the place. So I didn't like snakes particularly, but we all found ourselves picking these snakes up and putting them back in the basket.
To be able to pick it up and put it in the basket and have the thing running all over, I don't think I could have done it unless the adrenaline was really pumping.
By mid-October, the first unit is back in England, where they create a German town square on the Pinewood back lot. They also complete the remainder of a scene which has been partially filmed in India.
When Christina Wayborn escapes from the fortress, it's an idea of mine about the sari, they wind them round and round and round. I thought it was a great way to escape.
We did the landing of that scene in India, of course. And when we get back to London, we have to do the pickup shot where I actually do the backflip.
Having an athletic woman like Christina to kind of help sell the idea, to make the first moves, were great.
John Glenn said, "Christina, you're an athlete. Do you think you can do this?" I said, I want to do this. I told you, this is my stunt. I want to do it. So I did that stunt.
The cast and crew get a special treat when Martin Grace returns to the set. In November, the Pinewood Studios backlot becomes home base for Octopussy's circus.
We got a whole crew of kids in, entertained them with clowns and everything.
The big tent scene was coordinated by Barbara Broccoli. That was really quite remarkable how well she did that.
We had close to a 800 crowd, I think.
The atmosphere was genuine. We were in a tent and we had all this crowd there, and we did have the performance going on at all times, so it was quite festive.
Roger had some reservations about, putting the red nose on and all that stuff. And I said, oh, no, it is a great disguise, isn't it? We had quite a serious discussion about it, and I said, no, it'll be great.
They certainly had great fun romping around in that clown costume.
The final 2 weeks of November finds the crew back on the sound stages, where interiors and insert shots for the train sequence are filmed.
The scenes where I was fighting Bond on top of the moving train was the most difficult because there weren't doubles for that. We were actually rolling around, even though the train was not really moving, and shot in the comfort of Pinewood Studios. But the fact of the matter is, it still hurts when you fall.
We'd arranged for Kabir Bedi to have a electricity cable up his sleeve, attached to the sword, and every time he touched the wheel of the train, a spark would fly. It was done on a 12-volt battery.
I was hanging underneath. They assimilated this in the studio because you couldn't do it for real.
Peter brought in 2 full-sized carriages from the Neen Railway, and we had a crane came in and held these carriages above the ground, above the moving backing.
We actually got our scenic artist, I think it was Jackie Steers in those days. She actually painted the rails and the sleepers.
They had the tracks on a long flat roller going underneath it.
It really looks as though Roger is under the train and he's actually, hanging on over a revolving backing on a stage at Pinewood.
It's so crude and so old-fashioned type of filmmaking, but absolutely believable.
I was there perspiring, trying to pull myself up, really exhausting. And that day, King Constantine came with his sons to visit the shooting. And at the end of the day shooting, he said, I don't know what they pay you, but it's obviously not enough.
At the end of November, the filmmakers staged the attack on Kamal Khan's fortress.
We shot a lot of the scenes in India, but then we had to recreate it back at Pinewood Studios. And in India, in the heat, in our skimpy little outfits, that was fine. Back at Pinewood, it was November. There were icicles on the set.
We were shooting in the winter, and we had all these scantily clad girls.
And it was extremely cold.
Freezing.
And of course you had the problem seeing the breath.
And we were all pretending it was India again, but it was so cold.
We had the girls, most beautiful girls, doing all the fights, so we had to coach them how to fight.
They really enjoyed what they were doing. It was all swinging around on ropes and fighting and smashing.
We didn't have to put wires on them. If we built a rig, they were strong enough and trained enough to use it, to swing through upside down or the right way up or balance on the top of a pole.
There was no problem in trying to get a performance out of them. They were just delighted to have a go.
Waybourne really gets into her fight scenes. It is reported later that her punches to a stuntman's abdomen sent him to the infirmary.
It's possible. I am the lightweight arm wrestling champion of Europe.
In December, scenes in Octopussy's palace are filmed. The sequence features a unique weapon.
The yo-yo was actually an idea that George MacDonald Fraser had.
It presented more than a few problems because, it had to do all sorts of things. We had a yo-yo saw that was balanced and sort of, practical. And we had one that was on the end of a pole arm that would actually whir around with a motor drive on it so that it would, seriously cut through things.
They were almost inventors, they were almost worse than Q.
That saw, that was kind of scary, actually. We had to be fairly nimble at times.
The scene is especially trying for actor William Derrick.
The man that was deploying the yo-yo leant too far across the balcony and actually fell. Unknown to us, he'd removed some supports from the balcony so that he could get closer to the edge.
He broke his arm, and I know they were considering recasting him, but they'd already shot most of the sequence. He would not have any of it. He came back, his arm in a cast, and said, oh, no, I got to finish the thing. They shot the stuff trying to shoot it at all angles so that his broken arm didn't show.
In mid-December, one of the last major scenes is filmed in the recreation of an Indian bazaar on Pinewood's E stage. Production wraps in January with the completion of model shots and inserts. The filmmakers overcome the accidents and setbacks to create a rousing James Bond adventure. Upon its release in 1983, Octopussy becomes a record-breaking hit.
I was very proud of Octopussy. I thought we put in all the right ingredients. We outgrossed the other Bond film, which was satisfying to some degree.
It was just a lot of fun, and I think it's one of those Bonds that's a little different.
I loved playing Octopussy. It was great fun.
Even to this day, as I travel the world, you know, people will say, yes, you play tennis, but the most important thing is you were in a Bond film.
We all work in cinema to leave some kind of enduring mark, and being in a Bond film is certainly one of them. I'm proud to have been in a Bond film.